Facing a growing state budget shortfall that threatens to exceed the billion-dollar mark, even Republicans are now talking about tax hikes. A standing room only crowd turned out for the Oklahoma Policy Institute's State Budget Summit. A panel of elected officials, a tribal representative, and a noted economist fielded questions about what it will take for the state to bring in enough money to pay its bills.
Setting the stage for the budget discussion, OPI Executive Director David Blatt warned that the $900 million shortfall for fiscal year 2017 is growing.
All expectations are that when the Board of Equalization gets together to meet again in a few weeks, that hole is going to grow to $1.1 billion, 1.2, 1.4. Really, nobody knows how much worse it's going to get, but nobody expects it's going to get any better.
The panel discussion that followed asked who gets the blame for this budgetary crisis. House Minority Leader Representative Scott Inman blames Republican leadership.
We're here because we've got a group of elected officials who would rather govern by political philosophy than by political reality.
State Auditor and Inspector Gary Jones, a Republican, says too many state politicians are more focused on collecting donations for re-election than they are about doing the people's business.
We have people that are more concerned about their own political future than they are concerned about the future of our kids and grandkids.
And Chuck Hoskin Jr., the Cherokee Nation Secretary of State, says there's plenty of blame to go around.
We, as a state, collectively were content to send leadership to Oklahoma City that peddled the fiction that somehow if we cut taxes low enough, we would spur growth. That's a fiction.
There was general agreement that a number of factors combined to cause the budget crisis. Record low oil prices at a time when the state has undercut its revenue base through a series of income tax cuts, coupled with growing tax breaks and a constitution that makes raising taxes nearly impossible. Mickey Hepner, Dean of the College of Business at the University of Central Oklahoma, says these are all issues everyone has known about for a long time.
We could have seen for a decade that we were enacting permanent tax cuts when we had temporary surpluses. We could have seen all of this, but we didn't. And now we're stuck in a place where the train wreck is coming. All the levers we could use to stop it aren't available to us. And so the crash in terms of the state budget is coming in the next few months.
Budget cuts have reached the point where even the state Senate's chief budget writer, Senator Clark Jolley, now admits the cuts will impact core functions of state government.
With the Big 12 agencies, David had a chart earlier that showed that 90% is spent within core government. I'm going to disagree with that chart. It's like 94% is spent within the top 12, or what I call the Big 12 agencies.
So how do we fix it? A simple question, at least for Dean Hepner.
From an economic perspective, it's pretty clear. We're not bringing in the revenue we need to have to fund the government that we need to have. So we solve that by trying to bring in a little bit more revenue. So yeah, it should be on the table.
And that means enter the politics of tax hikes.
I mean, there's polling that shows the cigarette tax from a policy standpoint that people favor raising the cigarette tax like 2-to-1. I don't know that we could get the cigarette tax passed through the State House of Representatives and the State Senate.
If everything's on the table, that would include expansion of Medicaid, which would pump millions of dollars into the state's health care system.
There are states that are run by conservatives that do this. I think that, like I said, having everything on the table, I think we owe it to the citizens of Oklahoma to go and look and see, is there a plan by which that we can do this, and it'll ultimately benefit the citizens of Oklahoma.
So once again, back to the world of politics.
As long as it has any connotation whatsoever with Obamacare, ACA, federal government, health care, or anything, you're going to have a huge problem, and it is a political problem.
How about eliminating tax credits, tax breaks, and tax exemptions?
The tax credits, we've been talking about that for 5 years. I was on the task force with Representative Dank, and he did yeoman's work. That's been 5 years since we've been working on that.
Are politics again getting in the way?
Through budget cuts, apportionment reforms, tax credit reforms, it will be a huge, huge task.
Back to that billion-dollar-plus budget hole. Politics aside, Senator Jolley has to admit, everything is on the table.
But I don't know that with the size of the budget shortfall that we have, we're going to be able to get there without somebody at the end of the day saying, hey, we've got to look at whether or not we need to generate more revenue. I think that's something we're going to have to consider at the end if we can't get there through the other means.
As the legislature goes back into session, it is likely that the revenue failure that has already trimmed millions more from agency budgets will get worse, and more cuts will be ordered to keep the budget in balance. And that with the big budget hammer looming when the State Equalization Board holds its final meeting in a few weeks to tell lawmakers and the governor how much money will be available for them to spend in fiscal year 2017.